turns out there's a giant fight between Steve Bannon and Jared Kushner. Chief strategist Bannon is, of course, a person who was with Trump and ran the nationalist-like campaign, and now is with him in the White House. And Kushner is the son-in-law for Donald Trump and has vague responsibilities and power at the White House. Now, there's no winners here. They're both bad guys in different ways. Bannon is a white supremacist, and Kushner does regular old significant corruption. But in between that Hobson's choice, you don't want the white supremacist winning. So that's your background. Now, let's tell you about the fight. Daily Beast explains the fighting between Kushner and Bannon has been nonstop in recent weeks, according to sources who spoke on the condition of anonymity. It's been a, quote, open secret that Bannon and Kushner often clash face to face, according to senior officials, okay? So they're getting this from sources. By the way, so is Politico, New York Times, Axios, and others all have sources inside the White House confirming that there is significant fighting. One official said Bannon has lately complained, I should say, about Kushner trying to shiv him and push him out the door, and likened him to a fifth column in the White House. And kind of talk about fifth column is a little dangerous, given that he's a white supremacist, and well, he's going to double down on that with another word that's coded in a second. Okay, and another administration official says to the Daily Beast, Steve Bannon recently vented to us about Jared being a, quote, globalist and a cuck. He actually said cuck as in Cuckservative. Now, cuck is a term that the alt-right uses. It's short for cuckold, and then they very cleverly combine cuckold with conservative and get Cuckservative. Okay, and this is the kind of terms that they use when they want to demean someone and they think, haha, you know, you're not much of a man. Well, that's interesting given that he just shivved you. Steve Bannon, you are on the National Security Council and now you're not. So I'm beginning to wonder who the real cuck is. Okay, second of all, could you imagine if in the Obama White House they were using these kind of terms against one another? Oh my God, it would be unbelievable. But these guys, of course, are vicious by nature, so they're vicious to one another. Well, that I enjoy. So now, Cuckservative is really stupid and childish, but the other word used, globalist, is a little bit more dangerous. As the Beast explains, globalist is a term typically used by nationalist pro-Trump right-wingers against political opponents. However, the term has also come under fire for at times carrying anti-Semitic tones, and Kushner is Jewish. So this is the same kind of words that they used in Trump campaign ads when they would talk about the global financial elites. And at that time, when they were talking about that, the screen showed Lloyd Blankfein, who is CEO of Goldman Sachs. Now, ironically, Trump wound up filling his cabinet filled with Goldman Sachs guys, who now, unsurprisingly, are in the camp against Steve Bannon. But when he talks about globalists, and they refer to Blankfein and Kushner, and it is something that the right wing has been using for a long time. For some of them, they might not know it. They might innocently be saying globalists like, hey, we're nationalists and we care about America first, and I don't care about Venezuela or anyone else, or Canada or Mexico. I don't like any other foreign country. That's just plain old vanilla ignorance. But a lot of them do know what globalist means, and they are intending it in this way, and especially when they use it against Kushner, it lacks subtlety. Okay, now, who's winning? Let's find out now, and the details of the fight. They say it's clear that Kushner has been expanding his reach and level of influence in Trump's core circle of advisors, and the two men are essentially working against one another as they attempt to keep the president's ear and affections. Now, this is, of course, empowered by the fact that Donald Trump is a man of incredibly low intelligence and doesn't realize that this fight is going on in front of him and is really hurting his administration. They lack a clear path, they lack clear guidance. That's because the leader, Donald Trump, couldn't manage his way out of a wet paper bag. So he's like, what did Steve say? Okay, I'm gonna go in that direction. What did Jared say? I'm going in that direction. So when you have a situation like that, of course this kind of infighting grows and grows and festers and festers. It shows weakness at the top. Now, a senior administration official explains to Politico, the big fight is between the nationalists and what they call the West Wing Democrats. Now, you know that that's a Bannon source because obviously the rest of the Trump administration would not agree that they are West Wing Democrats. So you know that part of the people leaking are the Bannon guys. So now we go to Huffington Post. This is the 5th publication. In addition to running afoul of Kushner, Bannon has also clashed with White House economic advisor Gary Cohn, a former president of Goldman Sachs, who's close to Kushner. So that's the plain old corruption team versus the white supremacist nationalist guys. Now another administration official back at Daily Beast says Steve thinks Jared is worse than a Democrat. Steve has a very specific vision for what he believes and what he shares ideologically with Trump. And he has for a long time now seen Jared as a major obstacle to achieving that. Well, if you think he's an obstacle, you got to move him, right? And Kushner thinks that Bannon is an obstacle, so he's trying to move him, and hence the shivving. The former media executive, and that's what obviously Bannon was, he ran Breitbart, threatened to quit earlier this week if he was removed from his seat on the National Security Council, according to multiple reports. Well, guess what? He didn't quit, because as usual, it was an empty bluff from Steve Bannon. Oh yeah, Donald, I'm gonna take my ball and go home. I'll quit if you take me off the National Security Council. Fine, I take you off of it. Okay, fine, I'll stay. Remind me again, who's the cuck? Anyway, now the latest fight is over the Chinese. And now in this case, they're both wrong for reasons that I'll explain, but let me give you the background. A visit this weekend by Chinese President Xi Jinping will likely offer Bannon and Kushner another opportunity to push their competing agendas. Bannon's populism is largely responsible for Trump's protectionist trade rhetoric and for the president's campaign rally stories about how the US was being manipulated by China's trade policies. Kushner, on the other hand, has been serving as chief liaison between the White House and the Chinese delegation. There are no winners here because Bannon wants to start a trade war with China. Now, look, there is a little bit of truth, no, maybe a lot of truth that China, of course, has been manipulating their currency, and I think they actually have gotten the better of us in a lot of ways, and I think both Republicans and Democrats have been fairly weak against them. On the other hand, it's a really terrible idea to start a trade war. So that's a delicate balancing act that needs to be pulled off by someone who is sophisticated and intelligent. Do you see any of those in the Trump White House? No, they're gonna bungle their way into conflict with China, which is a terrible idea if Bannon gets his way. On the other hand, Kushner, it was recently revealed, did a sweetheart deal with a company connected to the Chinese government for one of his properties in New York. Experts think that the Chinese overpaid by several $100 million. That got so much attention that the Chinese canceled the sale. So Kushner stands to gain hundreds of millions of dollars from the Chinese, so he's got a vested interest in making sure that we get along fine with the Chinese, whether that's good for America or not good for America. So don't be under the illusion that Kushner and the Goldman Sachs guys are good guys. They're not. They're just against guys who are more evil in this case, or more despicable. I don't think Kushner's evil, I think he's just corrupt. So why is Bannon losing now? Because obviously he got kicked out of the National Security Council, that means Kushner's winning. Well, first of all, Kushner's Trump's son-in-law and married to the one person that Trump seems to love above all others, that's Ivanka Trump. So that's an enormous advantage for Jared Kushner. You can't fire him, he's the son-in-law. Okay, but second of all, you've got this. Now we go to the New York Times. Bannon's Bengali-style reputation has chafed on a president who sees himself as the West Wing's only leading man. Oh, Trump, what a sad, sad, insecure child. So when he sees that Steve Bannon's getting all the headlines and they're saying that he's actually leading the country, especially that Saturday Night Live skit where they had Bannon take over the Oval Office and had Alec Baldwin playing Trump call him Mr. President. Oh, that apparently hurt the big guy, and Donald Trump was very angry and pouting all night long about that. So since they're making fun of him for that, he's like, oh yeah, Steve Bannon's not in charge. He is such a child and so easy to manipulate. Okay, several associates said the president had quietly expressed annoyance over the credit Mr. Bannon had received for setting the agenda. And Mr. Chump was, that was a fun Freudian slip. Mr. Chump. No, Mr. Trump was not pleased by the President Bannon puppet master theme promoted by magazines, late night talk shows, and Twitter. So Bannon's losing some favor in the White House because Daddy Donald's feelings were hurt. Oy. Okay, but good, I'll take it. So what do we have ahead for us? Well, this fight is only gonna get worse and politically bloodier. So the Daily Beast says Bannon's far-right media allies are ready to wage a sustained war on their new enemy, Kushner. Oh, this is gonna get ugly. Roger Stone talking about Kushner using his allies in the press and in TV said, obviously Stone is on Bannon's side. He said, Jared Kushner, perhaps the one presidential aide who cannot be fired, is now in regular text message communications with Joe Scarborough. In other words, when Scarborough criticizes the president, it's Kushner doing it. So Trump, you should actually be mad at Jared and not at my boy Steve Bannon. Oh, there's gonna be a lot of this in the press going forward. And then Mark Levin, another right-wing talk show host who Trump listens to, which God help us all, said Jared Kushner, Gary Cohn, Dina Powell, the three big government liberals tightening their hold on the White House. I believe that's called shots fired. Okay, so Levin, Roger Stone, Steve Bannon, these basket of deplorables now versus the basket of corruption of the Goldman Sachs and Jared Kushner. Here's who doesn't win in this battle, the American people. But by the way, also Donald Trump. He's gonna have to cut off one of his arms because this is not sustainable. And I'm very curious to see what Breitbart's gonna do if Steve Bannon gets the boot and finds himself out on his ass. They're gonna be angry. And that internal civil war is going to be fantastic if that's what happens. On the other hand, if he throws out the Kushners of the world, he's got to have no smart people helping to fix the rudder here. I mean, Steve Bannon is the idiot who said to him, oh yeah, draw the line with the Republicans in the House on health care. They'll buckle and we'll win. Oops. Oh yeah, do the travel ban. We'll get it through the courts, don't worry about it. Oops. Steve Bannon so far has had nothing but losses. What happened? I thought you were a Svengali. I thought you were a genius. I'm telling you, there are no geniuses in the Trump White House. Only really bad guys doing really vicious battle against one another. Let's hope that they both lose. Our journalism drive is almost over. It ends in Trump's first 100 days. We need to hire more reporters and more watchdogs. Let's do that right now at tytnetwork.com/go.